But these words come from Luke. Remember, Luke is the author of Acts, and he's setting up the birth of Jesus. But before that, he actually is going to tell us a bit of the hope story that God is starting in John the Baptist. And John the Baptist's dad was a priest by the name of Zechariah. And we're going to start with chapter 1, verse 67. Let's read this song of hope that Zechariah prophesies for us. Starting with verse 67, Luke says, "His father Zechariah was filled with the Holy Spirit and prophesied, 'Praise be to the Lord, the God of Israel, because he has come to his people and redeemed them. He has raised up a horn of salvation for us in the house of his servant David, as he said through his holy prophets of long ago. Salvation from our enemies and from the hand of all who hate us, to show mercy to our ancestors and to remember his holy covenant, the oath he swore to our father Abraham, to rescue us from the hand of our enemies and to enable us to serve him without fear.'" To serve him without fear. In holiness and righteousness before him all of our days. "And you, my child, will be called a prophet of the Most High, for you will go on before the Lord to prepare the way for him," that is Jesus, "to give his people the knowledge of salvation through the forgiveness of their sins, because of the tender mercy of our God, by which," I love this, catch this, "by which the rising sun will come to us from heaven, to shine on those living in darkness and in the shadow of death, to guide our feet into the path of peace." This is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. We live in a world right now, friends, that is probably more so than I've ever witnessed. Maybe it's because of the heightened political scene coupled with a rampant refugee crisis in our world today that is unparalleled except for what we saw in World War II. That we are a world captivated by fear. Fear of danger, of pain, and maybe death. We have a culture right now that is gripped with fear of the other, whoever that may be, whether it be a Syrian refugee or a person that is homeless or someone across town that lives a different lifestyle or has a different color of their skin. We are captivated by fear. And in the next 4 weeks, we're going to reflect on God's declarative statements, "Let there be," as a way to help us to release fear and to embrace hope and peace and joy and Emmanuel, God with us. Instead of being held on by fear and worry, we're going to claim what God has declared will come. Let there be hope. Our passage today speaks of God's declaration, "Let there be hope for all mankind." This is what John the Baptist would be preparing the way for as Christ would come and give hope to each of us. And Zechariah's prophecy is a declaration for you and for me to live on the hope side of life. To live on the hope side of the things that are happening around our world. To live on the hope side rather than to live on the fear side. I find far too many Christians living on the fear side of life. And they've abandoned the sense of sovereignty of God and the hand of God that is at work. A lot of times I find that people are disengaged or uninformed about the kingdom work of Jesus that is actually happening in our world and even happening in our city, which is why I want today to expand our perspective as a congregation on what God is doing in our city. Every day we see hope and fear on display in our city. Every day we see hope and hopelessness on display in our city. Some of us are, apart from reading the newspaper articles, are disengaged. We're unaware of the hopelessness that is occurring in our city and what it looks like in our city. How is God bringing hope? How is God resolving the fear in our hearts and those who are in need in our community? I heard this last week talking with a dear friend of mine who's a member of this congregation. He's a police officer for Tacoma PD. He shared with me this, that this year alone, 2015, we have had over 300 drive-by shootings in Tacoma. It's epidemic. There's an eruption of violence. But that's also coupled with a sense that there's a hopelessness to some of those issues, but also a sense of hopelessness to the larger problem of broken people, broken family systems, broken institutions that help people in need. And of course, we have our food bank and a number of partner ministries that we partner with in our church, Habitat for Humanity and the Women's Shelter Network and a host of others. But today, I want to invite Mike Johnson to join me up here, and we're going to have a conversation around hopelessness and hope as it relates to the kind of work he does. Now, Mike is the executive director, CEO of the Rescue Mission here in Tacoma, Pierce County, and he sees, I think, accurately the state of Tacoma, and also understands, because he's a former pastor, he's also a Presbyterian. Come on, he goes to John Knox Press up north, so he's saved. We're good. But when I first met Mike, I was rattled. He shifted so much of what I understood about hopelessness as it relates to broken people, and particularly with the homeless in our city. So I want to invite Mike to come join me. Can you welcome Mike to UPC and join us up here? Thank you, brother. Thanks for being with us. And I know I had a chance. I was taken with Mike when we first met, partly because a lot of what I understood about homelessness and the work of the rescue mission in our area, I had never experienced the perspective he brought. And so I'm just excited you're here to join us. But I know you a little bit better than everybody else. Tell us a little bit about yourself that can help these folks get to know you.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Thanks. I came to Washington State in 1987 as an Army Ranger at Fort Lewis. Met a 19-year-old Tacoma Community College student working at JCPenney at the Tacoma Mall. Yeah.
JCPenney's?
And,
a lot of people here met someone at JCPenney's. It was the Tinder of that generation? No, okay, awkward.
So,
what section of JCPenney's were you in?
She was working in the young men's department. At JCPenney.
Oh,
I needed a pair of pants.
Smart girl. Jeez. Wow.
And I needed a pair of pants, but I needed a lot more than a pair of pants.
Sure,
I was
sure.
this guy who basically just spent 3 years full-time, 80 hours a week learning how to kill people. And
Yeah.
I know that sounds really dark, but it is.
No, that's what the military does. Yeah, right. It's trying to.
Well, and it's what the Rangers do, like with a particularly violent focus.
Yes,
and I was just like lost on the inside. And I met this girl, and she had Jesus in there, and I had never seen anything like that. And I said, "I'll take both of you." And so I've been with them both ever since. We'll have our 25th wedding anniversary next summer.
That's great.
And
that's awesome. Way to go. That's encouraging.
Along the way, we've adopted 7 kids, just one at a
That's
time,
amazing.
and still don't know why
You said 7.
7.
Wow. So you have like a
I hit
short
my
bus
head really hard in the Rangers, and no.
Is that that's awesome though, and I got a chance to meet some of your kids this morning, and they were just a delight. So, what a joy. Yeah.
Well, and so about a dozen years of pastoring after that, and then God sent me to Seattle's Union Gospel Mission in 2007. Didn't see it coming, but I had no idea how much healing I still had to do from having grown up with an alcoholic dad, and so there I was now on assignment from God in Pioneer Square, running the downtown Seattle campus for Seattle's Union Gospel Mission and trying to help these other folks, and on the way, like they healed me, you know, and so it's just been a real gift from God to get to come alongside people at the lowest point in their lives, and then get to see God do what only God can do to restore hope.
Restore hope. That's beautiful. Well, and so here at UPC, we've been living into this vision, this sense of a call from God that we wanted to not be just a country club with choir and sacraments, but we want to be outward focused. We don't want to just be inward focused. We want to be not just talk about the love of Jesus or share it, but to be it. And that's an orientation that points us outside the walls of our church. And so I know many in our community have a growing burden as they become aware of the needs of Tacoma for people who, don't know the love of Jesus, but also are struggling in some of the more extreme ways that we understand hopelessness, like being homeless or suffering from drug addiction. before we get into the hope side of what you're seeing in Tacoma,
Sure.
Tell us about what you're seeing that burdens you, and help us get a sobered picture of what Tacoma is dealing with right now.
Well, the Rescue Mission is only one of several organizations that try to give God's hope to people that are really hurting. But we're one of two organizations in all of Pierce County that have an intact family shelter. So if you're a homeless family, where are you going to stay tonight? There are two places you can go. Two.
Yeah. And that's Adams Street Square, is that right?
Yeah, and the other one's Salvation Army.
Salvation
and we work
Army.
really closely with them, and they're great partners.
Beautiful.
But, I mean, imagine that. Like, there's two places, in Pierce County for a homeless family to go tonight, and we're full. We're always full. And so tonight, and any given night, there'll be 3 or 4 families sleeping on cots in the foyer at the Adams Street Family Campus, hoping and waiting for an opening in one of the actual shelter rooms. But the sort of the fire department and the city says they can only be there for a few days.
Sure.
And so, imagine being that family at the end of 7 days, your time up on the cots, and now it's like, what? You're going to go sleep in your minivan?
Yeah.
At any given time on our 2 family campuses, we've got over 90 kids.
90 kids.
90 homeless kids.
Every night. That is amazing. I mean, that is, to us, is hard to get our arms around, this idea that's the kind of existence that kids would know in our city.
Oh my, yeah. And then, and that's on the 2 family campuses. The downtown campus, we served 836 meals yesterday, on Thanksgiving Day, and just at the downtown campus. And that's breakfast, lunch, and dinner. But that's
a lot of food.
That's a lot of need, and sometimes you can look at the scale of the need and just think, gosh, like, where do you start?
Yeah. Okay, so let's get to the hope side, because this is something that you've challenged me with, and really, I think will be helpful for us today, and what's helpful for me is kind of myth buster.
Yeah.
I mean, busting some of the myths about what we understand about not only homelessness, but just brokenness in people in our city, and how that works. Tell me, you once said, and this is, I think this was helpful for me. You once said, Aaron, poverty isn't primarily economic; it's something else. What did you mean by that?
Well, so most of the folks that we work with have really not had a great start. There's actually a 10-question survey we could give everybody in the room if we did, and we would be able to find the 48% of Americans who will only ever have an adult experience of homelessness at a rate of 1.3%.
Okay.
And then we could actually name those people. Then there's another group of people, as they sort of march up the scale of how many of these 10 questions they say yes to, that when they hit 7, 8, 9, these are people that are going to have an adult experience of homelessness at a rate of 25 to 33%. And we could actually, if we had the manpower, we could go out and do the list. So what's going on? What's the issue there?
Yeah, what's making that happen?
Yeah, the issue is something that the Centers for Disease Control calls adverse childhood experiences. So growing up with just all this junk going on in your family, and there are things like emotional abuse and physical abuse and sexual abuse and emotional neglect and substance abuse in the home. And so 92% of the people in our recovery program report having grown up in a home with substance abuse going on. Wow. 69% report childhood sexual abuse. 87% report emotional neglect and emotional abuse. Just all kinds of stuff going on for them. And so they don't know very often what to do with themselves or what to do with you. They're pretty sure you guys just are a different kind of human being. You're able to do things they just don't know how to do.
And it just works for us.
Yeah, stuff works for you. You know how to do things, and everything they touch just blows up or burns to the ground because it always has. Every time they tried to maybe save some money, somebody came in their room and stole it all, or and whatever. I've worked with people who were with girls who, at 8 years old, this girl was her stepdad's drinking partner. Why does a man get an 8-year-old girl drunk?
Yeah.
And I could tell stories like that all day long. Yeah. And so the kind of homelessness that the Rescue Mission is set up to work with is not fundamentally an economic problem. It's a relational problem.
Relational problem. That was stirring for me, because I'd always thought that the solution was to throw, and maybe this is what I want us to capture here, the solution was to throw resources and money at this problem. But you're not saying that is certainly there is a place for resources. There's places for a warm meal
Yeah.
and a cot, but that the bigger issue is relationships.
Yeah, and people need help, and so the rescue mission, we're gonna have, there's gonna be 500 people that are gonna sleep on our 3 campuses on any given night. That's amazing. Yeah. And those 90 kids, I mean, they need help. They need a safe place to be. They need clothes. They need food. But that is like the 10% of the iceberg that's sticking up out of the water. I mean, what the other 90% is all that other stuff that's going on in there. And people have been harmed in toxic relationships, and they're only going to get well in healing relationships. Yeah. And so we can throw a bunch of resources at things, but until we learn how to bring ourselves into the mix, then we haven't really started addressing what's going on.
Yeah, that's good. So I think some of us get stuck with something we talked about, which was this dancing of the lies. Yeah. And what I mean by that is that there's in family systems thinking, and a lot of times in marriage counseling, if you've ever been through marriage counseling,
write this down, by the way, it's gold.
You can write let's take some notes. But is this notion of that some lies need a partner in order to survive. They need a complementary lie in order to continue. And a lot of times you find this in marriage, for instance. One partner believes in the lie of futility, the other partner believes in the lie of insignificance, and they tend to dance, right? Well, in the same way that there's this lie, and this was really challenging to me, that it's not just those who are down on their luck and find themselves homeless that are experiencing hopelessness, but that actually the other half of that lie that must dance with that is the lie I believe, which is that I'm hopeless to help them. I'm helpless to help them.
Oh, yeah. I mean, you get off the freeway and there's somebody with the sign, and it's just like the problems seem to go a mile deep and a mile wide. Yeah. How do I begin to wade into any of that? I don't have the technical knowledge. I don't know. So the best thing I can do is maybe give somebody $5 or something like that. And as the car drives away, it's not just the dude with the sign that's hopeless. It's the dude behind the wheel.
Yeah.
And it's just, where do you start?
Yeah.
So that for us, the fun thing is to be able to get in a room like this and to say, actually, you guys are everything somebody needs. You just don't know it, and they might not know it either. Yeah. So people need help, and the rescue mission is going to help them. But more than anything, what they need are healthy, healing relationships. Yeah. Well, all the church is a bunch of relationships. That's all it is. I mean, if last night at 1 o'clock in the morning, when no one was here, a meteorite pulverized this building into a big crater, UPPC wouldn't cease to exist. You'd find some gym at the school to go meet in while you rebuilt the building, and you might even be glad since it's apparently leaning. Did you guys know there's a level down here? Like they have to level this stuff because it's leaning. Yeah, totally. So you might even be glad if a meteorite pulverized the place. You get a chance to build a new building or whatever. Sure. But what wouldn't happen is the church would cease to exist, because all the church is you.
It's relationships, yes.
It's just a network of relationships. Yeah. You guys are a Fort Knox resource of everything that our folks need. But they don't know how to enter into it, and you're not sure how to enter into it either. Yeah. And so the rescue mission gets to function as sort of a facilitator of relationship. Yeah. And when we can do that, that's where the real win is. So, because our help is temporary, but what's permanent is somebody in one of these pews becoming a member of this family, and in that process discovering how many of those lies they thought they'd worked on when they were at the rescue mission. Yeah. But then they get here and they realize, oh yeah, I still have room to grow, because people here are treating me in a loving way, and I thought I was not quite lovable, or that if people knew the truth about me or whatever, that they wouldn't. And I came here and people love me anyway. Yeah. And, it's just this is where the healing happens.
Yeah, beautiful. And I think that also restores something of that missional sense we have, which is it's not just folks coming here, but this idea of us going out and establishing those relationships, and that relationship is the greatest resource we have. And I think I was challenged by an article that was just actually written yesterday by a columnist for the TNT by the name of Matt Driscoll, who I've just enjoyed reading him the last several months. He's recent to the staff there. But he wrote an article about the phenomenon of homelessness in Tacoma. Did anybody read that yesterday? Come across it? A couple of you? Yeah. Many of you. Okay. And there's a quote that came out that I thought really hits on what you're saying. It was from a man named Brian Keegabain, who's a homeless man who is living on the banks of the Puyallup River. Some of you may not know that Puyallup River is actually, they're a large homeless population that tends to encamp there, and at times the city has to move them out and have to find other places. But he said this, I think most people are just too preoccupied. This is a homeless man himself. I think most people are just too preoccupied with life to really even worry about anyone but themselves and their families. And my thought when I read that was, that's not Jesus. That's not the message of Jesus. We actually want to be people who do care and aren't just insulated about our own family or our own church, but are actually extending ourselves to be the love of Jesus. And I guess my question to you, because there's so many ways that we can talk ourselves out of being the love of Jesus because, hey, I don't have enough skills, or I don't know how to work with the mentally ill, or some of these dynamics. And yet you kind of busted that by saying, you know what? Actually, you may have more resources than you're willing to admit. So how would you encourage someone here who maybe tends to talk themselves out of being the love of Jesus to phenomenon like this, homelessness or people who are in need?
The first thing that I would say is that I think that it's need that makes us turn to each other, and that if we didn't have need, we might not turn to each other. Because the truth is that even in a good relationship, and my relationship with my wife is better at this point than it has ever been, and I would hope that it would continue to get better. Yeah. And there's still times where it's difficult, because we're different. And
I have no idea what you're talking about. But
okay.
My marriage has always been just.
Well, I'd love to spend some more time with you, Aaron.
You really should.
So that I can maybe some
you really
of that
should. You
can rub off,
Learn a lot from me. Yep.
But I think for most of the rest of us who are in the human race,
yes,
we would admit, that all human relationships are tough, and if we didn't have need, we might just not turn to each other.
Yeah.
But need turns us to each other, and that there's need on both ends, because poverty and need are not the same thing. There are a lot of people in this neighborhood who are not poor but have serious needs. Yeah. I mean, there are families that are marked by dysfunction here. Yeah. I mean, there are people in this room that have known firsthand what it feels like to watch someone struggle with an addiction, and you can't seem to know what to do at all to help.
Yeah.
And so poverty and need are not the same thing. We have need too, and we need to reach across this divide of the other. We need to, because in that process, we're becoming more of who we're meant to be.
Yeah.
And then there's these other folks who are pretty sure that they're just not like us, and they need us to come along in a van at 11 o'clock at night, like we're going to start doing in Search and Rescue this winter, with volunteers, and bring along some hot cocoa and just say, hey, my name's Brian. What's your name? Want some hot cocoa? Where are you from?
Yeah.
And like treat them like human beings.
Yeah.
And which is the greatest need of, and then as these two people can actually meet each other and find that, oh, wow, we're just people. And we actually need each other.
Yeah.
Then a relational bridge can start being formed. Now, you do want a partner like the Rescue Mission, and we're not the only one, but a partner like us who can provide some of that temporary specialized help.
Sure.
But ultimately, the temporary specialized help is just temporary stuff. Yeah. It's the friendship. Imagine how awesome it would be if there's this guy sitting over there and he's sitting next to, is there anybody in the room named Dave? Are there any Daves? Is there a Dave? Okay.
Yep.
Will some Dave raise his hand?
Got a few.
Where's the Dave? There's the Dave in the back. Okay, there's a Dave in the back. All right, so some dude's sitting back there next to Dave, and Dave and this guy met out at the Puyallup River encampment. And because Dave came out a few times, and treated him well with some folks from the rescue mission, he agreed to come in out of the encampment and get clean and sober in our 1-year-long recovery program. And Dave just stayed in relationship with him, and they did stuff together as the guy was getting well. And then he started coming to church here in that process, and somebody here he met got him a job, and now he's just a member here.
Yeah. Yeah.
And no one who meet him would ever know that he and Dave met, out at some tent someplace.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you guys see that happen all the time. So what's so hopeful about that, because we do feel, we have that sense of hopelessness that we could never be a part of, individuals or as a community, about about solving some of these problems, but in reality, it's happening all the time. It just takes that relational touch. And I would say, maybe I'd just go out on a limb here and say, I cannot imagine in this room there aren't people who wouldn't want to partner and volunteer cold evenings this next month between now and Christmas to be a part of Search and Rescue and just to go love on some people, maybe give them some socks, fresh pair of socks, or a blessing, but also just to start that kind of friendship.
Yeah, and offer a prayer.
Can I get hands for that, please? I'm just kidding. I love it. See, and this is the thing is I actually want to encourage you to talk to Mike afterwards as if you're feeling prompted to that, or go to the rescuemission.org, trm.org, and check out how to partner with them. But I just think this is not something where the church needs to develop a program. We don't need to put a bunch of resources. We can just say yes and say, I'm going to take 2 nights the next month, and I want to be a part of something like that. Yep. And then talk to you after the service. I love that.
Yeah, and that's a great way to start. I want to tell you one other little quick story. There's this guy named Mark Ursino. Mark has helped us climb Mount Rainier for the last 5 years in a row with a team made up of half homeless people and half people from the community. 5 successful summits in a row.
Love this.
Yeah, and every year after our climb, we do this post-climb barbecue, and every year Mark cries. And that in and of itself is hilarious because Mark is built like a fire plug. He's just he went through Catholic schools and his nickname is Sister Mary Patrick because he whacks people with real
sure.
He's just tough,
prone to violence.
Exactly, and there he is and he's crying every year he cries and because there are people whose lives have been transformed by becoming a part of a team and going and doing this amazing thing, and they've revolutionized their view of themselves. One of them, Dawn Brown, is a flight attendant now, with United Airlines. And if you knew Dawn's backstory, it would drop your jaw. And nobody, who's ever going to meet her knows. And she got to climb with us a couple of years ago. And there's Mark, and he's crying. And you know why he's crying? Yeah. Because he never dreamed that something that he just did for fun could actually help change somebody else's life.
Yeah, to tie his recreational pursuit with changing a life. And what I love about that is when you get on a mountain, it doesn't matter what your title is. You're all on the same footing because you all have to take that one next step. And to see business people partner and develop relationships that ultimately are fruitful, I just love that. By the way, there is a documentary movie that was done on that story. It's going around kind of making the circuit at film festivals around the country, and Mike is like the lead of it because it's about this climb, these partnership climbs, and I'm hoping we can maybe show it here if that could ever happen. It'd be really fun.
Yeah. But it can be done with, it doesn't have to be mountain climbing. It's like, I met this lady, I said, what do you do for fun? And she said, I blog. And I said, great, bring your laptop down, sit down with the other ladies in our recovery program, and teach them how to blog. Yeah. You can write your blog, and they can write their blog about coming off the street and getting clean and sober. That'd be a powerful blog. I'd want to read it. And in the process, you're becoming friends and sharing each other's stories, and it's like, where do you go to church? And then you start
all because you know how to to run a blog spot, right?
Yeah.
And that's what I love about it is it takes the sentiment of let there be hope, and hope breeds hope. But when we believe the lie of that there's hopelessness and helplessness, that we can't help and we can't hope people, then we can't change anything for Jesus, right? And that's why I love that image and how each of us has a niche. Some of us are in high school, and we have a niche that we can partner with kids that are in that same age group. Or you even mentioned the elderly. Say something about that.
Oh, well, I mean, we were just talking earlier, and I was saying it just it breaks my heart that there's this dysfunction in American culture about productivity, and productivity is great, and I'm glad for productivity, and I try to be a productive person, but
there are limits.
Well, but it seems like once like we don't quite know as a society what to do with people, once if they're not productive. It might be homeless people, or it might be
elderly
people.
years.
Exactly.
Yes, very much.
And so, but the truth is that if relationship, if what we really need to bring is ourselves, then people with the most self to bring are some of the most important people in the room.
Yes.
One of my new friends is a guy named Alex. He was in our newsletter a couple months ago. Alex came in, 41 years old. Didn't know how to read. He was reading at a first grade level. And Karin, 69-year-old, retired teacher, said, hey, I want to tutor. And so she came down and got matched up with Alex. And here's Alex, whose only skill is that he's huge. And so he was the guy. Which
is a skill, by the way. I'm working on it. This last week I did.
Whoa.
Thanksgiving
Well,
dinner.
Alex is Alex is big, man. And so he's the guy that the other guys would go pick up and use as an enforcer.
Yeah.
And that was it, and so he'd dealing and running drugs, and that was, his life, and all he'd ever known. And here's this, and this big guy, and he's sitting next to Karin, who's this, 69-year-old school teacher, and she's teaching him how to read, and in this process, he learns not just how to read, but that he's lovable.
Yeah.
That he's worthy of someone whose life has, that he thinks has done everything right. And that person would choose hour after hour to come to him in this place of embarrassment and shame.
Yeah.
And not judge him and sit with him who has done everything wrong. The hope that comes out of that is incredible. And all she's doing is bringing herself to the process. The rescue mission's like the canvas, and you need some structure. And what Karin does with Alex, that's the masterpiece that Jesus is painting with the two of them.
Yeah. Beautiful, beautiful. I want to ask one more question, then we got to wrap it up. But I thought this was really helpful for some folks.
I hope so.
I know so. I just feel like people have been challenged this morning. But last question is this. I hear a lot from a lot of people say, I don't know how to work with mentally ill people, and since most homeless individuals are mentally ill, that's not something that's too scary. It's unsafe. That's one of the rationales. Certainly, I would never encourage working with homeless individuals apart from the canvas of a ministry like Rescue Mission or other groups that are working around the city. But what would you say to that?
Well, so it's true that that when over the 60s and 70s and 80s, when society took a different approach to trying to help mentally ill people, what more or less that meant is we sent a whole bunch of them to the streets to die.
Sure.
What's not true is that most homeless people have an organic, serious mental illness. So SAMHSA, the Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration, says that about 20% of people that struggle with chronic homelessness have a serious mental health disorder like schizophrenia or some other psychotic disorder.
Sure.
Believe it or not, those folks, I teach mental health first aid, which is a nationally certified course out of the Centers for Disease Control, or the Centers for Behavioral Health, Community Behavioral Health in Washington, D.C. It's really awesome. And you can learn how to sit with somebody like that, too.
Sure.
You really can. But that's actually about 1 out of 5. Most folks are struggling with a substance use disorder or some other kinds of problems, PTSD, from growing up in this chaotic family or being a soldier. So most of what's actually going on is people are just hurting. Yeah. It's not necessarily, that they're hearing voices, though some people are, and that is true. But most of those people are not necessarily a risk of being dangerous.
Sure.
Even, they're at incredible risk of having something done to them.
Yes, they're the victims.
Because life on the street is not safe.
Yeah.
And when you're in that environment and you're not able to distinguish between reality, and you are a victim waiting to happen.
Yeah.
And so it's just not. That's one of those things that sort of that Satan could use from keeping people from getting involved.
I think that's something I hear a lot from folks. I'd hate for that to be the churn. I think that point about relationships being the greatest resource we have, I think it's something that really stays with us. And I'm so thankful for you. Welcome to Tacoma.
Yeah. Welcome back to Tacoma.
Yeah, back to Tacoma, really.
Yeah.
And welcome to this position, but also welcome to friendship with this church. We believe in what you're doing. We believe in what God is doing in kingdom work in Tacoma and celebrate what we're seeing happen through your ministry. I also know we want to participate. Yeah. This is a phrase, by the way, I'm using all throughout Advent, so you might as well write it down now. We need to participate and demonstrate what we celebrate. We need to participate in and we need to demonstrate what we celebrate.
Otherwise, that's why he's the professional right there. That just happened.
Otherwise, this is all decoration. All this is, at the end of the day, is us getting presents for someone else's birthday. And we need to change our mindset around what it means to usher in and welcome Jesus in our midst, which calls us to be hope givers. I joked with the first service, it's like having the flu. We just got to cough hope everywhere, right? And just spread it around, because there are lies that we dance with that keep us from being people who spread and share hope. And that starts with Jesus. But I'm so thankful for you, brother. Can we thank Mike for joining us this morning and his work. I hope I hope you're encouraged and you leave today with with a challenge as to how you understand brokenness in our city, and also how each of us can be on the solution side of that brokenness. You are one yes away from someone else's hope in Jesus. You saying yes to going out and serving in a capacity like the search and rescue van, or a number of other ways with our food bank, with the celebration of Community Christmas, where we help families that are struggling during this Christmas time on the 19th. I mentioned that in the letter, but that's just one yes that you can be on the hope side of Christmas, okay? And I want to encourage you to think about that as a goal for you and your family this month. Friends, let's close in prayer, and I want to pray specifically for Mike. Mike, would you keep your eyes open for just a moment? Friends, will you extend a hand like we do? We don't have ability to maybe cover you in prayer with our hands, but we're doing it by this symbol, so receive this. Lord Jesus, thank you for Mike, your call on his life, the work of the rescue mission, and the work of many other ministries, but today we're particularly thankful of the rescue mission's work and how they are declaring hope in you for those who feel hopeless. And help us to not contribute to that hopelessness with our own hopeless sense, but to partner in it, to see the solution side, to see how you could work through our gifts of reaching out to the other without fear, but instead to take a risk, to go beyond our comfort zone and experience Christmas this year in a radically different way. Lord, you give us courage to do that, and continue to pray for this ministry, that your favor and your hand, your spirit would be on it. And we pray this in your name, and everyone said, Amen. Amen. Thank you, friend. Thank you, brother.